Hello, my name is Martin Heinsbroek. I'm a managing partner at a data analytics agency in the Netherlands. With pride and pleasure, I'd like to introduce the case of our analytical-based service monitor and improvement system for the Dutch National Railways. In this presentation, we will mention the NS. NS is the Dutch National Railways. This case is about managing, measuring, and monitoring customer experience. And I'd like to stand still for a moment at customer experience. At most organizations, the customer experience is recognized as a key driver of performance. At some organizations, they have defined their purpose around customer experience. The reason of the existence of the NS is the customer experience, because we are talking about a regulated monopoly. And if you want to optimize revenues or profits at this regulated monopoly, it doesn't make sense. This is all about customer experience. In the next few minutes, I'll present to you the context, how we got started with this system. Following up, Pieter Verhoef, professor from University of Groningen, will follow up on explaining the approach and how we innovated there. And Joost Bosma, who's leading who's director of customer insights, will present the impact of our case. And he will specifically focus on 3 points of impact. From the model outcomes, we had new insights, and the new insights got translated to initiatives. Second, we developed a fact-based system on which you could allocate different amounts of customer investments. And we're talking about very serious amounts of money here. We're talking about, on an annual basis, of 4 billion euros of investments of the Dutch National Railways. And the sole purpose of that is, in the end, to increase the customer satisfaction. And third, the impact is around the outcomes of this model have become the fundament of the customer strategy. So that's the third point of impact. Now I'd like to give the word to our commercial director, who from the Netherlands gave us a video message.
Good day, my name is Hans Peters. I'm the commercial director for the Dutch Railways. And I feel honored that I have the opportunity to introduce to you the program that we developed based on our big data approach to improve and increase the customer satisfaction of our travelers, but especially to normalize the relation that we have with our external stakeholders. Let me first give you a bit of background. The Dutch Railways is the former state-owned train operator in the Netherlands. We are basically seen as like the Dutch national football team. We transport about 1 million travelers per day, and they all have an opinion, and they don't hesitate to voice them, either in social media or in politics. So we are, as you can say, under a lot of scrutiny. And to get out of the vicious circle that everybody was just voicing their opinions and having their judgments, we have investigated and sought for a way to break that vicious circle by looking what exactly is driving customer satisfaction in our operation. And we found a method that has the ability to make very clear what our travelers can expect from us, can very clearly monitor a performance, and it allows us to align our internal organization and resources in a way that every employee knows exactly what her or his contribution is to customer satisfaction. I would like to show you how we developed the program, and in that way I hope to be able to convince you that what we are doing is groundbreaking, and I hope that it excites you as much as it does to me and to our organization. Thank you for your attention, and well, enjoy the ride.
So I'd like to follow up on the context on how this got started. I'd like to tell a little bit about weather in the Netherlands. If you look at this chart, it tells about number of days per month that we had snow. And in quite a relaxed winter, we had below 10 days of snow in the winter of January 2008. And then when it gets a little bit tougher, but still kind of doable for a railway system in the Netherlands, we get to 10 days per winter. But then we have these outliers, and then we get to 20 days of snow per winter, and we basically get a crisis in the Netherlands. We had a total artifact of the railway system, and like every day in the news, people were talking about how the railway company, the NS, were failing their customers. And the NS had to make a choice, and they choose to go double. They choose to kind of raise their stakes. And with the infrastructure company, ProRail, they communicated to the market, to the media, that they would invest millions improving the network, because last winter we fell through the ice, and that won't happen again. Now, when you double the stakes, you better be lucky a little bit in the casino. And actually, they were not very lucky. So what happened was we had another terrible winter, which was another terrible outlier, and basically people got a little bit stressed. And the question was, did we really manage the customer experience better than before? And the answer was this chart. First, we saw a dip in the first winter in 2009. You'll see that you go up in summer, you go down when you have a really tough winter. And then the second winter, when we had the real crisis, we went even deeper. We go to 70%, and below 74% customer satisfaction, we get it into the penalty zone. So there's major repercussions from the government. And then, of course, the third winter, when things happened again with the snow on the railway, we kind of completely fell through the ice, and we got a real crisis. It resulted into a House of Parliament hearing, where kind of people had to kind of admit guilt and say that they would now really fix this. And we were very honored that in May 2011, both Joost, who's here, and Peter and myself took the initiative to organize a workshop. Because we said there's kind of two types of problems. One problem is, how do you prepare for a winter? But the other problem is more structural. How do you kind of improve, steer, and monitor your CSAT in a more structural manner? And that kind of workshop was the whole start of our program. And I'd like to give the floor to Peter Verhoef, Professor Peter Verhoef, who will explain the approach that we developed from that moment.
Thank you, Martin. Our approach. So let me start first. What is the theoretical background? And actually, our model builds on a large literature that is available in marketing, and that probably starts, or not fully starts, but there's a lot of literature that looks at what is the quality of services. And especially since the 80s, 90s of last century, service marketing has become an important discipline within marketing. So that's our first, let's say, backbone of what we focus on, and specifically the service qual model, which is built, which we show in this graph. So the next thing is actually there's also a lot of research on customer satisfaction. And this research actually shows that customer satisfaction is very important in driving, let's say, future business growth, profitability, and shareholder value. So that also ensures us that satisfaction and creating a strong customer experience is important from a marketing perspective. More from a practical standpoint for you, you see that there's a lot of attention, especially in business, for customer feedback metrics. And specifically in the early 2000s, when Fred Reichelt introduced the Net Promoter Score. Although this promoter score can be debated, we've seen it's strongly adopted within practice. And it also competes with satisfaction. I will go more in depth later on in our how we dealt with that in our project. And subsequently, there's an extensive literature, especially again in the service marketing area, that looks at what is actually driving satisfaction and how is satisfaction being built up. There are all kinds of models being developed, attribute-driven models that looks at how can we explain satisfaction. So this is the backbone, let's say, of our research. Our research consists of multiple phases. And the first phase is actually pretty important. It's maybe not so important from, let's say, a modeling perspective, but when you look into many firms, you see that they collect many, many metrics. Also at the customer level. So within the NS, they collected customer satisfaction. They did it on a very large scale. But they also collected data on the Net Promoter Score. And the top management especially also relied on reputation metrics. And the question, of course, is when you're starting this kind of project where you are trying to optimize customer experience, is what metrics should we focus on? So the first thing we had to do to align the organization was to do metric selection. And we based ourselves on some work being done more in the branding literature. There's an important paper by Al-Awadi and other co-authors that states some criteria for good metrics. So what we did, we basically used these metrics, these criteria, to evaluate the metrics that were available within the NS. And it appeared that specifically customer satisfaction had the best papers. First, customer satisfaction is the most theoretically solid metric. Second, customer satisfaction with the NS, we have lots of available data, historical, and we are able to use that. And thirdly, and that's important in this context as well, this is a metric that can be understood and is adopted by external stakeholders, specifically the government. So we ended up choosing customer satisfaction as our most important metric. So having done that phase, we went to a second phase. And that's actually, we started up to build a driver model. And our main dependent variable there is customer satisfaction. And customer satisfaction, when building this driver model, we said, well, what are important drivers? That probably relates to the train. That's the core service. That's where a lot of things are happening. If the train is not on time, people are probably not satisfied. But you also deliver, let's say, additional services on the station. And within the train, you also offer services. Beyond that, you try to communicate actively with your customers. As well, there's all kind of social media attention for your brand. So we built this model as a first start of our project. Then, when doing so, we start to take advantage of the large available customer satisfaction data that was within the company. So we were able to use 120,000 records of individual customer satisfaction data. And if you look at the customer satisfaction literature, that's indeed a large volume of numbers. So beyond that, we were able to collect all kind of additional and mainly internal data within the company. So we integrate, let's say, operational data on punctuality, on what happened at the station, but also we included unstructured data, which was then, of course, translated in more structured data about social media. So we had basically integrated these data sources, and this integration combined with the large volume of satisfaction data allowed us, or for that we could say, this is a kind of big data approach, and that also helped us, let's say, in the organization. So what did we do in terms of our modeling approach? Hereby I have to note that we start with our dependent variable being customer satisfaction equal or larger than 7, because the firm, its main objective, given this, the concession, the agreements they had with the government, was to have customers giving a satisfaction score of 7 or higher. So 80% of those people needed to have a satisfaction score of 7 or higher. So that made us to use a binary variable, and then we had this longitudinal data, so we also thought, well, we have to include lagged satisfaction, as well a number of drivers which are built on our model. However, note that we don't have, let's say, the typical longitudinal data, we have repeated cross-sections. So you cannot have lagged satisfaction of the individual level. So what we did, we included a kind of average lag per customer segment in our model. So that is basically our model that we estimated. So let me move to the results. Let's say this is the table where we show the results, but I want to focus on one specific aspect of what we found. Here we show, for instance, specifically I want to focus on the role of the train. So in our model, the train is the most important driver, and that's not surprising because it is about punctuality. It's about seating availability. And we see that in our estimation as well. If there are no seats available, people are less satisfied. If the train is not on time, is delayed, people are less satisfied. So that is an important driver. Beyond these drivers, you also see that the station adds something to the explanatory power. The service provided in the train provides some explanatory power, as well as exposure. I want to briefly focus on the exposure variable. There we also saw a correlation, an effect of social media. This immediately within NS also pushed them to say we have to work much harder on our social media presence. So that was a kind of immediate result from this model exercise. However, when looking at this model, and this was really a kind of exploratory approach, we thought, well, there are some problems. And specifically, we had this problem of a very low R-squared. And a very low R-squared is very difficult to explain to managers. It also included that we had some, let's say, difficulties in let's say, getting also internal more market research people being, let's say, this is a good model. So we had some, let's say, resistance towards these model results, although some of them made a lot of sense. So we had to move to a next phase. And the next phase is actually moving to a much more survey-based model. And this also shows to some extent what sometimes the disadvantage of big data can be. Big data can sometimes be correlational, you're focused on really the available data, and the advantage of more a survey-based approach is that you have more, let's say, influence on the data that are being collected. So we moved to that phase, and we also said, well, let's also enrich our conceptual focus of the model. So what we did, we first, of course, built our model again on the big data model we developed before. That gave us, let's say, the early insights. Next, we also took a much more journey perspective. So if people travel in a train, they first have to go to the train, then they go to the station, then they are on the train, and they go out of the train and go to the station, and then they hopefully go to work or go to the parents, etc. So you have to look through that whole journey. And finally, we also, again, looked at some other variables, such as the exposure variables. More importantly, or also important, is that we looked much more at, let's say, things that can really satisfy customers, and let's say the traditional dissatisfy. So we also try to take more, let's say, the experiential aspects of consumption in our model to some extent. So that's the next model, the next phase. Again, we estimate a logit model. Here we use cross-sectional data, so we don't have the lag term in it. It's a pure cross-sectional exercise. And I also want to mention that we still included some external data sources. So it's still, you have survey data, but you integrate these survey data with internal data. So here we show the main results. Again, the train is very important. Basically, this confirms our early big data results. Second, the station is very important. And finally, we also see that let's say, traveling from home to the station, as well as from the station to your endpoint, also helps in explaining the satisfaction. So I don't want to go in detail about these insights, but there are a lot of things that you can learn from it. For instance, I want to mention again what we also saw on the big data model, that seeding is very important. As well as that people want to, that you see, for instance, that the atmosphere at the station is very important. This atmosphere captures that experiential nature of the service. So the next phase, and that's very important in these kind of models, especially in an organization as DNS, it's a very large organization where a lot of people are involved. You don't only have external stakeholders, you also have internal stakeholders. So first, we showed our model results to the top management and said, what do you think of them? So that was much more a kind of discussion way. But we also went to frontline service employees. And those people I show here are, let's say, the service employees that are on the train. And those people were asked to evaluate whether, to evaluate which driver was important using a kind of green, red, and yellow kind of way of asking questions to make it easy for them. And it was surprising to see that they really, that their, let's say, opinions were rather in line with our results. So that also confirmed, let's say, the face validity of our model, but also will help us in, let's say, diffusing our model results in the organization. How then do we move it to, let's say, actions? And Joost will reflect more later on these actions. But it's a very simple way. Basically, our model results show the effect sizes. So what is the effect of a specific driver on satisfaction? But in some cases, you're already high on that driver. So there's not much to improve. So what we did, we add an additional axis, say, okay, what is the current level, what is the maximum level, and what is then the improvement potential? And if there's a large improvement potential, there's much more to gain. So here we show some actions. I specifically want to focus on, for instance, Initiative A, where the seating availability was again an issue. And based on that, we have developed a mobile app. Again, Joost will reflect on that later on. Finally, our third phase of our model exercise, we actually went back to the big data driver model to some extent. Because we also built a kind of system, a marketing intelligence system, which provided daily information or monthly information about what is the state, what is the current state in terms of satisfaction, but also tried to make projections about future customer satisfaction. So we built that model. It's based on the Logit model presented in phase 1. And as you can see, we were pretty much able to predict satisfaction. This immediately helped the organization because guess what? What happened in 2012? We had another winter problem. And we had strong ambitions. And we predicted, using our model, what would be the potential to achieve your ambition. And actually what we showed, well, that will be difficult unless you will invest heavily in a stronger customer experience. So actually an impact was also that we did do better expectation management. Because top management can have these ambitions, but at some point these ambitions are just too high. So let me now give the word to Joost. Oh no, finally I want to focus on what did we knew theoretically, is that I think theoretically we demonstrate how satisfaction can have an impact in the public sector. So the public sector is under-investigated in marketing, and this is, I think, a nice example of what can be achieved there. Second is that we developed this measurement system, and we moved from, let's say, attribute-driven satisfaction models, which are blamed for having all kind of survey problems, to much more actual customer experience-based models. So let me now give the floor to Joost.
Thank you, Peter. Talking about impact, I'm very happy to be here as well, together with my colleagues from the Dutch Railways. I don't know what's... Thank you. And as Hans Peters and Martin already told, this has groundbreaking impact for the NS organization, and it excites the total management leadership team, because now we have a joint focus and a joint image on how we can improve our customer satisfaction. So let's stress 5 sources of impact we have. First, we created some new initiatives. Second, we can fact-based choose between investments. Third, we build our customer strategy upon it. And fourth, and I will elaborate on the first 3 items, but in the fourth place, we have a fully focused and steered organization. And on the last place, and finally, we also getting a lead with our regulator instead of following the instruction of the regulator. So Peter was already telling about the impact of seating and combined it with the waiting time. When you are not able to sit, the waiting time of the time experience in the train is even worse. So we introduced not only to invest more in trains, but also create transparency for our travelers, for our customers, getting into the train. We have a feedback app as well, where they can choose whether they are happy or not with their seating availability. And Martin already told about the investments we do yearly, and it's about 4 billion euros a year. And we now are able to choose between investments. And we created the CSROI, the Customer Satisfaction Return on Investment, which is totally new for NS, but it helps us a lot in choosing. And choosing in a big organization is a big quarrel. And the customer satisfaction strategy. Our biggest aim is to get our concession again from the regulator. The biggest impact for that is our customer satisfaction. The biggest customer satisfaction score is our single factor for that, our single metric. And now we are confident about our strategy. And I want to show you a movie in which we engage our colleagues, how we do it, based on the model which we brought together. And before I start the movie, I want to thank you for your time and attention.
The passenger in first, second, and third place. Objective: 80% of all passengers give the NS a customer satisfaction score of 7 or higher. The NS, the Dutch Railways, has been connecting people in the Netherlands for over 175 years. These days, customers are than ever before, and this applies to the NS as well. To better fulfill the expectations of passengers and stakeholders, the NS has recently reviewed its policy, in which operational performance and power of execution take center stage. Our overall ambition is to put the passenger in first, second, and third place, with the objective of ensuring that a customer satisfaction score of 7 or higher is given by 80% of all passengers. The big data driver model was used to validate this reviewed strategy. This model is based on factual performance, big data, customer surveys, survey data, the customer journey, the pyramid of customer needs, and expert knowledge. In this, all drivers are expressed in the same measurement indicator, the percentage, creating insight in the relationship between the way in which waiting time is spent and punctuality, for example, and enabling the various factors to be calculated in terms of impact. Quantitative calculations, however, have shown that this focus on our operational performance is not sufficient to reach the target value of 80%. Excellent operational performance may prevent performance failures and keep customer satisfaction scores stable, but will, however, never lead to a strong increase in customer satisfaction. It has also become clear that 30% of these drivers have not been included: the way in which waiting time is spent, cleanliness, and contact with the NS before and after the journey. To achieve this ambition of 80%, the NS will need to even more explicitly put the passenger in first, second, and third place by satisfying the following 3 customer needs. 1. Control. 2. Appreciation. 3. Freedom. In-depth investigation of the reviewed strategy shows that these 3 customer needs are built up out of 9 themes. These themes not only comprise 95% of the NS customer satisfaction scores, but also create a good balance between dissatisfiers, such as punctuality, and satisfiers, such as a pleasant way to pass the time while waiting. The excellent execution of these 9 themes has the potential of attaining the target value of 80%. In order to achieve this ambitious target, the passenger in first, second, and third place program is built up out of 3 components. A. It serves as a backbone for improving internal control. B. It creates external transparency by means of the "And how was your journey?" feedback app. And C. It develops more customer initiatives on satisfiers and the freedom theme in terms of customer needs, such as the rollout of the NS Extra Loyalty Program, inspirational day trips, personal door-to-door travel support through the NS Journey Planner, mobile payment options, a fast Wi-Fi connection, and by learning from experiments conducted in a test train. In this way, the NS is putting the passengers in places 1, 2, and 3, factually, visibly, and perceptibly, which will prompt the passenger to embrace the NS once again.
Thank you.
I actually have 3 different kind of questions. The first one is, you started off your presentation by focusing on it's essentially a regulatory monopoly. And you said, okay, customer satisfaction is the main criteria to optimize or to maximize. I was just wondering whether all our econ colleagues would agree whether this is really in a monopoly what we should do. So could you take a little bit of time to focus on the big picture? How does customer satisfaction links to any other metrics that we use in the economic literature?
Well, from let's say the government is really emphasizing that the National Railways has satisfied customers. Because if customers are dissatisfied, the politics are also blamed. So for them it's very important. However, of course, in this case, the government is also shareholder. So they're also interested in financial consequences. And what we show, actually, is that with our model, you can allocate your resources much more effectively to good improvement. So actually, that can also enable you to do cost savings, because you do not invest in service improvements that doesn't improve satisfaction. Beyond that, if you go to the literature, you see that there is an impact of satisfaction on financial value. On customer value, in our instance, that's a bit difficult to establish because switching costs, so to say, for many customers are high. To immediately switch to another travel mode. But still, I think even internally they say, well, if you improve satisfaction with 1% or something, you earn 25 million more.
Yeah.
And I have to look at that.
Yeah.
The second one is more methodological. In essence, you have customer satisfaction as a continuous variable. In all your models, you break it down to a binary variable. So I was wondering, what is the major motivation? I understand it's a 74% hurdle rate that the government raises, but in essence, you lose a lot of information.
This is not an unexpected question. Why we did this is that we wanted to build a model that can be adopted by the firm. And their main criterion is that 0-1 thing. To move, let's say, people from, let's say, relatively unsatisfied to satisfied. What we also did in our analysis, we looked at, let's say, what is if we do it, let's say, on a continuous scale. And we see rather similar results. So, and we're not so much in this, and that maybe also here is, we're not so much interested in the exact effect size. So it's much more about what is the, let's say, the substantive effect size, and does it really have an impact? So that also, I think, allows us to do this.
And the third one, you started off your presentation by focusing on all the problems you had in winter. Later on, when I looked at the results, punctuality had a rather small impact on the customer satisfaction scores. But I would assume in winter, essentially, the train not coming, that's one of the major problems.
We have a discussion internally as well. The model is based on a stable period, when trains are rather punctual. This is a situation in which 96% of the situation will be. In winter, 4%. Eventually dries up. Yes.
Thank you for the presentation, a very nice presentation. I'd like to sort of pick Bernd's first point but take it from a different angle, which is you're looking at customer sat when nowadays it's very fashionable to look at in financial outcomes, and then I understand there could be two good reasons for this. One good reason is it's actually an objective, a corporate objective and a cultural imperative in its own right, and the other, as you pointed out, is that it can be a very good intermediate indicator of financial outcomes. Given particularly its first role in some sort of triple bottom line accounting as a performance of the firm, I'd like you to think about what you've done here with customer sat, including embedding it in the culture of the organisation, and think about how transportable this application might be in other areas where there might be other metrics other than just financial metrics, where you can get some real insights to how to perform better according to its own criteria.
Now let me start with your second question. So last week I had a talk with someone who was responsible for marketing in a hospital. And actually I used our example of the Dutch Railway. I said, okay, we developed there a model which also in your case, let's say customer satisfaction is very important. So I think our model can be used more, let's say, public services, or let's say the idea behind the model, to be applied there as well. Also there you see that in many cases there is continuous, let's say, collection of customer feedback metrics. Because that's also now much more standard practice in hospitals, other public services. So that's an answer on your second question. With regard to your first question, is how can you get customer satisfaction, let's say, be part of the culture, right? So that's I think what we're clearly showing at the end of our presentation is this customer 1, 2, 3 strategy, and to make that clear, our outcomes are used as a strong input in that strategy. And I think we in this is what we show as a kind of learning exercise, because we're working on this for a couple of years now, and the organization is now transforming much more to a customer-centric organization. And in the next year, this program is being, let's say, really rolled out within the organization. So, and that not only involves then marketing insights, but that basically involves the whole commercial organization, and that's why that we have really strong support of this CMO, Hans Peters. Yeah, because he's directly reporting to the board.
Yes, in addition to this, you see here the KPI tree, and with colleagues from our lean department, we are introducing the KPI strategy for all employees in our NS organization. So we are aligning all the departments based on what performance do they have to give in order to get our ambition of 80% 7 or higher. So this is a tremendous change for our organization, and we're happy for our lean colleagues because they are involved by changing to realize that. And the other thing is that our other colleagues are not here because they are within a Dutch organization to explain what are we doing here, especially in the case of customer experience. Because customer experience, as you all know, is very, very interesting about how quantitative is customer experience. And I'm very glad that we brought it into one proportion, in one metric, so we can address and we can have the discussion about what's the impact of customer experience. That helps us tremendously.
Let me just follow on from that, if I could, and ask two questions about that. It seems to me with you've got a very, very good story, an impressive story around implementation and embedding the results of this. And two aspects to that, I guess. One aspect is longitudinal, which is, my experience with organisations is they do these things, they look at the interventions, they get some runs, and then it loses its social currency. And so do you see this as continuing or losing some of its relevance because you've done what needs to be done? But before you answer that, let me also tell you the second part, which is not only longitudinal use of this tool, but also cross-sectional use of this tool, and that's to what level of disaggregation you do this, because if you're going to make people accountable for outcomes, then in some senses it becomes very dangerously easy to actually do it at amazingly low levels of aggregation, which becomes a very expensive exercise.
We have the ambition to roll out not only this one internally, but this one externally. So our customers can give us information and feedback on our performance. And we also roll out a customer loyalty program, and we can follow their feedback as well by enlightening. So this is how we integrate it.
Yeah, maybe to reflect on your first question is that it was not so much shown in our presentation, but along with this we also implemented a marketing intelligence system that at least provides continuous information to top management. That also allows, let's say, them to constantly look at what is happening, and that makes this key metric much more important. And what you of course see with many satisfaction studies, they especially cross-sectional studies, they do that once a year, or maybe, and then there's a report, and then it ends in the desk of the manager, and nothing happens. And that's actually a big change here, because that was actually happening at the INS as well. We had a marketing research department that did a bunch of customer satisfaction studies, but had no impact. And actually with this exercise, and this embedded exercise, we had a strong impact within the organization. Coming to your disaggregated question, I think what we strive for is to have more, let's say, or high level, let's say, initiatives that really have an impact. More on a higher level than on a lower level. Actually, what we saw in discussions earlier, before actually having this model, we had discussions on you cannot imagine that, but should the color be blue or yellow? Right? And based on some insights from psychology, which can be beneficial, but it's probably very superficial facts. And actually, this model allows us to go much on a more aggregated level to see what are really important aspects of drivers, and based on these drivers, new initiatives can be developed and tested.
In that case, thank you very much indeed for a very interesting presentation.